Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to the show. So, I've been working for more than 25 years now and in different areas. 25 years, I don't look that old, but so I've been working since childhood times. Growing up, I learned a lot of things and, in mostly form of stories. Some of them actually motivated me and some scared the shit of me. And I learned that stories impact a lot. And that's why this show called as Stories That Impact. Basically, the idea is to get the people to share their stories and show everyone how it has impacted them and what did they do to come out of that situation. You know, and they're going to conclude it with a piece of advice for our listeners. My purpose with this show is to share the stories and impact as many lives as I can. Now, let me welcome you to my guest, Reena Patel. She's from United States. Hi, Reena. She's from the United States in Columbus, Ohio. Reena is a curious mind wrapped in a 5 foot tall body. I'm not sure whether tall word goes with it, but yeah, it's okay. She's been blessed with varied career as an impact-driven leader with knack for creative solving problems through forward-thinking vision, strategic planning, and taking a holistic view of things that come to her. Basically, I met Reena around a decade ago while I was working at Nationwide. And, we've been connected well and we've been good friends since then. And before I pass it on to Reena, let me also inform that this is my first show. And Reena has shown a real amount of trust in me to actually come on the first show. So thanks a lot, Reena. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Amit. Welcome, everybody else that's listening. Good morning. It's a bit early, so bear with me as I blink through the morning. But I had a story. Amit and I were talking about this, and he had mentioned that he was looking to start a show. And I am a person of many curiosities and many random stories. So I said, well, all right, let's give it a go. It will be something we can fumble through together, but we can at least learn from it and move forward. So today's story, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the power of education and how informing myself became something that was really powerful for me in even a recent context. So I have been a curious person my whole life. Education was something that was really important to me growing up. And it was something that my family really instilled in my brother and I as we were raised. So we were never told anything. It was always about going to look something up or figure it out or ask someone who might know. It was never, this is the answer. And so for those of you who have been following along, the United States has gone through some transitions recently, and there's a lot of topics that are really hot. But one of the things, as I was looking at all of the images on the news and the media and social media, I started thinking about how I could authentically affect change in my neighborhood and in my community, and what would that look like for me? Because I am a 5 foot tall person. And so going into crowds and getting into a space in the middle of a pandemic just didn't sound like a good idea for me. I can easily get stepped on or lost somewhere along the way. But I did want to, educate myself more on the matters that are at hand and see how I could be a better person for my community. And one of the things I did was involve myself in the process of how our nation works to think about people as a whole, how we handle our business, how certain things are run. And to that extent, I ended up joining the US Census Bureau.
Wow.
Yeah. So I am a government employee officially on the weekends.
Yep. Great.
And one of the things we do every 10 years is count the population of the United States. The goal with that count is to understand what economies are growing, what areas might be shrinking, making sure we're appropriating We're appropriating representation, and monies accordingly so that everybody has what they need in the space they live. For example, the community I live in, it's grown quite a bit in the last 10 years. And one of the things that we're looking to get is additional funding for a new fire station, because the single fire station that was servicing our entire community is no longer able to handle that volume, right? It's too many people, it's too many fires. And so we're looking to get a new fire station. So
Yeah.
one of the ways that they get census workers to understand that community makeup is have us go door to door. And I had not known what I was getting into when I signed up for it, but I like people and I like stories like you do, Amit. So I said, okay, let's figure this out. And I have been doing it for 2 weeks now, and it has been such an amazing experience to get to know the people of my community on a much more personal level and understand the types of things that are really important to them and the types of things that we should be advocating for.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really interesting to hear because I agree that census plays a very vital role, and doing that, it's a communist service basically. What you're doing, and share some examples on what happens because I'm just curious to know what happens specifically when you mentioned given the state where the country is right now. What happens when you go and knock at the doors? How is the responses? Share some examples if you have any.
I have a lot.
I thought so.
And they're across the board. So my job as I go is not to antagonize. It is not to poke any fires. It is not to change any minds in terms of your experiences and your biases towards your world, right? I don't presume to know what you've gone through. But what I do like to do is try and educate. The challenge for me right now is that a lot of people just aren't answering their doors. I think there's this mistrust undertone that's happening a lot, that people just don't feel comfortable, even for me, knocking on the door. I mean, I'm probably as non-threatening as somebody could look, I suppose. But a lot of folks are just not answering their doors. They don't feel comfortable talking to anybody. They don't know who might be asking for what. They don't feel like I might be representing them well. And so there's a lot of that undercurrent of discomfort around even just opening the door. So I get a lot of no-shows, right? A lot of people don't even open the door. But when I do get them to open the door, one of the things that I've noticed, so I ended up talking to a person yesterday who has suffered a traumatic brain injury and has had brain surgery as a result of that. And she is a hardworking single mom, has a 13-year-old son, loves what she does, loves her community, wants to be a part of it. But having her fill something out online or having to follow a large set of instructions is rather difficult for her because she's not able to do a lot of complex maneuvers anymore. So by talking to me for 5 minutes, I could collect the fact that she's a hardworking woman. She has a son who lives with her and she lives in this community. And that's really all I wanted to know. So while she was folding her laundry, I could collect my census information. We could engage in a nice dialogue. She actually asked a little bit more about what the census means and offered me some advice on better ways that I could help collect it because she knew the people in the community probably weren't answering the door for me very often.
That's nice. That's
so I
really
had a good
nice.
exchange. I met a couple of other guys. One gentleman was staying with his brother, and he had mentioned that he had found out about the census through doing some research. He had heard about it on TV, and then he didn't know much about it. So he himself went online and started educating himself about the census, what's it about, why are we doing it? And he got so excited about it that it was representing him and his community. He did his, and then he went to his brother's house and he made his brother do it as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's the power of education, right, you said, being so it's glad that your parents made you, I would say, resourceful, right, going and finding things on your own. And the power of education, even as small as, because when we talk about education, I think many people have this notion of about going to the college and getting degrees. It's not just that, educating in any area, knowing about certain things and getting yourself updated is also an education. So yeah, kudos to that person. And yeah, that's wonderful.
It's been
Great. So did you
profound.
yeah, no, I can understand. Share, do you, I'm sure you, like you said, many people don't even knock door. Did you got any heckling or anything like that? And how was your experience?
Well,
And
so
how you dealt with it?
People have been, for the most part, very kind.
Good.
I did have a gentleman's pit bull charge me yesterday. And I'm afraid of dogs. If anybody knows me, they know that I run the opposite direction from dogs, even if they're little. But it did charge me. The nice part was the owner was very sweet about making sure that he did not bite me. He stopped. He was, but I definitely had the position to run the minute
Yeah.
I was moving.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Right. I mean, you don't mess with a pit bull. You just,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
But it was, so far people have been really good. I know I'm on a text message string with other folks that are doing this work. We all sort of compare notes and experiences and things. And there are definitely folks in other communities that have had people curse at them, people yell at them, people chasing them out of their yard or out of the front door with a bat. That came up at one point. So there are definitely people that are a bit more aggressive, but I would say they are such a minority that hopefully it doesn't become an issue. Knock on wood, it hasn't happened to me yet, but it definitely is out there. And I think some of that might just be the temperament of the times. Some of it might just be, quarantine fatigue. Some of it might be, I don't want to give any information and I don't feel that you need to have my information. I feel like you might not do something well with it. I've heard that quite common. So a lot of times I educate on privacy. I educate on volume. So, I met a lot of families yesterday who didn't feel comfortable sharing their names or their birth dates. And honestly, I was just looking for volume. I said, that's okay. You can give me a nickname or I can mark you down as person number 1, person number 2, person number 3. Right. And then I don't need your birthday. If we do an approximate age, it just helps me get some demographic information around the people in the home. We don't have to put in your precise date of birth. We can just put that you're 23 years old or that you're 45 years old. That's fine.
No, that's
yeah.
Sorry.
No, it was good. I learned from the previous weeks that seemed to be a better way to get people more open to that conversation.
Yeah. And actually a very good idea and technique or sort of a solution, because you rightly said that you're not there for exact number in that sense. It would be nice, but it's okay because you're counting the census. So it's more of people and numbers and age groups rather than specific age in that sense. So that's actually a very good thing. So let me ask you this, from this whole experience, what do you think you have learned from this overall experience that you have?
Ooh, good question. So, I'm sure I'll learn more. Like I said, I've been doing it about 2 weeks. But so far, I think the nice part for me was to be able to do the homework for the authentic solution for me, right? So I had mentioned earlier that, you see all of these images, you are wanting to do something, you feel like you need to make a change. But honestly, for me, the homework of what should I be doing to, okay, I'm going to go and volunteer to be part of the census. It was about a 3-day internal dialogue, right? To marinate into the education of what is my authentic value system? What are the things that I want to be a part of? How do I think that would make sense for me? And what would that then help other people realize, right? So for me, those were the things that I really valued in saying, okay, this process and this resourcefulness, as you call it, came from that feeling of I need to do something. I don't know what. I don't want to do what I see other people doing, but I still want to do something. So how do I get there? And, I love meeting people. I love hearing their stories. I'm really excited for the next few weeks, what to come. But honestly, I think it was the process that was the most enlightening for me, that, there is another way out. There are other ways to make change besides some of the more conventional or traditional things you might see, right? It doesn't mean you're not doing anything. It just means what works for you might be a little different.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. That's really amazing, because most of the people, even I've met, everyone has this giving back thing, right? You need to always give back to your community, your city, your state, and eventually your country, and of course to the rest of the world. So this is a really good way to do that. Now, let me ask you one question. It's in my head right now. Do you actually, before you go to a community area, do you do
Mhm.
some homework about that community, understanding, googling around, is there any threat, is there someone sitting with a sniper? I'm like, "Shh, kill you." I just kidding, but do you do some sort of a
No,
background to know?
absolutely. And, they try and keep us in our community. So I live in this area. They try to keep us within the area that I live, but I don't know many of the neighborhoods around me. I tend
Yeah.
to be a bit of a homebody. And so I go home, I go to work, and I come back home. But I absolutely do a lot of research because honestly, I even as I told them when I signed up, my personal safety was number one on my value system, right? So I was thinking about how I wanted to affect change. Number one was without detriment to my personal safety,
Yeah, absolutely,
right? So
absolutely.
yeah, 100%. Google Maps. I've read about different areas. The census is actually quite good. We're good about self-reporting as well. So as other people in my neighborhood go to homes on days that I haven't gone there, they may
Hmm.
self-report and say, "Listen, this place wasn't as friendly, so be careful if you go there." So yeah, there's a lot about the safety component that even the census is really particular about, because if you feel unsafe, if you go into a space where you feel like, it's not even worth knocking on the door because it doesn't fit, they're okay with that. They're not,
Yeah.
it's not as important as your personal safety.
True. That does make sense as well to me. I just thought it's quite curious question in my head. Anyway, so just let me ask you, probably. So, what advice do you think you would give to our listeners with your
Uh,
experience?
so I gave you a very specific example, right, of my work with the census, but I think the advice overall is really just about, um, being educated in your process and in your system. So for me, this was born out of a need to do something, but it also was very enlightening around how does the system work? Why is this done? Why is this important? I mean, in school we learned about it, but it was maybe two paragraphs in one day and you sort of forget about it and oh, someone else will deal with that. But the most common thing I get even yesterday was I never knew that that's what this was about. I never knew that this was something we need to do. I'm almost 40 years old and this is the first one I've ever done, even though we do them every 10
Wow.
years, And so I think for me, it's about letting people know that the education is really the power here, right? It's not about some of the other pieces that people might make you believe. But for me, in any topic, the more you can educate yourself, the more satisfying it can be, the more interesting it can be, and the more you can then make an informed opinion on anything, right? That you understand why something is happening or how you can affect change. So that would be
Yep.
mine. Don't hesitate to educate yourself. And like you said, it doesn't have to be a formal degree in anything. It doesn't have to be a fancy certificate. It can just be a conversation with somebody. It can be the internet. It can be the encyclopedia if they still make such things. it can be
Yeah.
it can be anything, but for me, that was the biggest part. I didn't know much going in, and 20 hours plus of training later, I feel like if someone wants to have a conversation on the census, I could go a few hours without taking a breath. So,
No, no, that's absolutely correct. And what you mentioned is true. I mean, you need to get educated because without education, we'll really not know if the direction that we or the city of the state or the country is heading correctly or not. And with the right information and the right education in this sense, like what you're doing now, and educating people about the census and how it can impact, right? So
right.
that's commendable. So wonderful, wonderful. All right. So that thanks, Reena. Thank you very much for your time. I'm sure we've been sweating so far, but no, that this was our first show, and so that's the whole idea about my show is to get people like Reena who are actually doing something, impacting the world, and sharing her story, and hopefully we can impact somebody, to learn and understand and be better. So please drop your comments and do let me know how you liked it. And of course, I'm gonna share this. It's not live, by the way. I am doing it one day prior, not to edit anything. the idea is to just, it's first show, right? I get that courtesy. So the I'm going to share it on my YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook groups. So please drop in notes and do connect with me. And if you have a good story that you feel that you that can impact anybody, please message me. I'll be very happy to connect with you, and we can go live soon. All right. So thanks again, Reena. Have a wonderful day ahead. It's still morning for you.
It
So
is.
enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks again for coming on to the show.
Thank you. Have a great rest
Bye.
of
Take care, dear.
your day. Bye.
Bye bye.